live on Friday, October 10th, 2014. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm joined by the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurelic. Bill, before we tackle recruiting, there's a couple team-related items I want to touch on. There are two topics that fans have wondered about that head coach Urban Meyer addressed on Thursday. The first being why the Buckeyes never go under center in short yardage situations and run a quarterback sneak. 100% of the time Ohio State is in the shotgun, even if they're going for it on 4th and inches. Well, Meyer explained his logic yesterday and said for a team that operates out of the gun so often, it's not easy to just change midstream and have the quarterback go under center. Meyer says the risk of fumbling the snap is much greater because the center and quarterback aren't used to it. He did say it's something the staff has discussed, but they don't feel it's best for the team right now. Bill, you're a former football coach. I've heard a lot of fans ask about this, and I was curious about it myself. It seems wise to go under center and run a quarterback sneak on some short yardage plays. What are your thoughts about the Buckeyes never using a quarterback sneak?
I really, Dave, don't have a big problem with it. I kind of go with the logic that, as you mentioned, I've coached before, and the coach knows his own team better than anyone. And, nobody's around those kids or sees them more than Urban Meyer and that staff. And I guess the bottom line for me is I really tend to trust their judgment on that, and that they're, if they think it's the best thing, they're going to do it for Ohio State. Right now, they don't think that's the best thing, so I guess I would say I would go with their judgment and trust that.
The other big question fans have had recently is why is Ohio State playing press coverage with its corners, but not having the corners jam the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage? For example, you'll see Durant Grant come right up to the wide receiver at the line, but not get his hands on the wide receiver when the ball is snapped. Well, Meyer explained his rationale for that, too. He says that the reasoning is that, quote, lunging at a receiver at the line of scrimmage and trying to jam him is a really good way to get beat deep because receivers are so good at using their hands and beating bump and run coverage. So the Buckeyes are comfortable using press coverage to eliminate screens and things like that, but not having their DBs get their hands on the wide receivers at the line of scrimmage. Again, Bill, this goes against conventional wisdom. Usually when corners are pressed up against the line, they're usually using their hands to try and jam the wide receivers. But it was interesting to hear Coach Meyer explain his rationale yesterday. Your take?
Well, yeah, I think that's a philosophical thing with the staff. And, maybe in part is that, Chris Ash is new to Ohio State as a defensive coordinator. So and of course he works with the secondary, what he's teaching the defensive backs may be a little bit new to them. It's maybe a little different than what they've been playing in the past years. And perhaps as the defensive backs get more accustomed to Chris Ash and his style, perhaps they'll change a little bit and incorporate some of that. But right now, again, I think it's just a philosophical thing, and it's the way they feel that gives the Ohio State Buckeyes the best chance to win, to play the best pass defense that they can. I think, again, while the defense hasn't been great this season, I do think you are seeing improvements as things go on, and it'll be something to continue to watch, certainly.
Former Buckeye defensive end John Simon made his debut for the Houston Texans last night and played well. Simon was a 4th-round pick of the Baltimore Ravens last year, and the Texans signed Simon off the Ravens practice squad earlier this week. Simon played a lot last night against the Indianapolis Colts in a losing effort. He picked up his first career sack, Bill. He played in 7 games for the Ravens as a rookie last year. Now Simon has been reunited with Mike Vrabel, who is the Texans' defensive line coach. Bill, it's always good to see a good young man like Johnny Simon realize his dream of playing in the NFL. And from what I saw last night, it looks like he's going to stick in the league for a while. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I love seeing John Simon back on the field. As you mentioned, just a tremendous young man. And I talked to him many, many times when he was being recruited, and was always very impressed with not only John as a person, but the athlete, of how hard he works, and always very polite, well-spoken. So, you got to root for those guys, especially when they're Ohio State guys. And certainly all of Buckeye Nation's got to be rooting for John Simon. And I think, as you mentioned, I think he may be on the verge of establishing himself as an NFL player that can stay for a while in the league, and that would be great for him and for Ohio State.
Finally getting to Bill's wheelhouse, the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting made him wait till the latter portion of the show to get to recruiting. We're finally getting there. 4-star wide receiver Alex Stump from Lakewood St. Edward is expected to make his decision any day now, as you said on the site today, Bill. He's committed to Kentucky, of course, but there appears to be an excellent chance, in my opinion, he will flip to Ohio State. Stump injured his ankle this season, recently had surgery. He hopes to be fully healthy in 6 months. Bill, do you think this is a close call, or do you think he's already made his mind up? And where do you think he'll go?
I really think it is a close call for him. I think he, and I've talked to him several times in the last week or so, and, like I said, a number of times since he got the offer from Ohio State, and I really think he is mulling over the pros and cons of each school. He committed to Kentucky early, but he wanted that Ohio State offer, been an Ohio State fan. I think he really wants to take a good look and figure out what's best for him. I don't think, as some do, some feel it's a slam dunk. He's a lock, so to speak, that he's going to flip to Ohio State. I don't feel that way. I think he legitimately could stay with Kentucky. Now, having said that, I do feel that in the end he is going to flip, but I don't think it's a done deal. I think he's going to really think things through and then make the final decision based on what he feels is best for him. And again, my feeling is that he will flip, but we'll see. It is going to happen any day now, perhaps. He said any day to maybe up to 2 weeks, so we'll see.
Bill, I will root for Michigan before you use the word lock in relation to a recruit.
That's probably.
I will never root for Michigan.
Yeah, the word lock when it comes to recruiting, I'm not sure it's in my vocabulary.
No, it's not. I've known you for too long, and I'll never root for Michigan. So I know you'll never use the word lock, but I think there's probably a better chance that I would root for Michigan than you would use the word lock. Sticking with recruiting, this is a general question, but I'm curious to get your take on it. They have 16 commitments right now. If you had to guess an exact number of how many they're going to sign first Wednesday in February, signing day, how many do you think they're going to sign?
I think it'll be at least 21, and I've said that for some time now. I think it could be 22, could be as high as 23, but if I had to pick one single number right now, I think I would go with 22, but I feel pretty safe saying it'll be at least 21. And, of course, that's all based on getting the guys they want. If they would miss out on guys, they would not take guys just to take guys, so to speak. They have to get high-caliber players. And, I'm doing a feature this weekend. My Sunday feature is my latest edition of my 2015 Ohio State Hot List. And it's really somewhat amazing how many guys, really great prospects, that the Buckeyes still have a very legitimate shot at landing. In fact, the list is expanding, believe it or not. Usually as recruiting process gets deeper and deeper and more towards National Signing Day, the list gets smaller and smaller. But when I did my hot list last time, I had 18 prospects on it. It's going to be more than 18 on Sunday because you're now getting into the picture guys that are committed schools more so than ever. They're getting into the high state picture. For Garrett Taylor, for instance, defensive back fitted to Michigan, is making an official visit to Ohio State. You look at the other guys like Jerome Baker, certainly is a very realistic possibility. So the list is expanding, and there are just so many outstanding prospects out there. I can't see Ohio State not getting at least 5 of them.
Last thing, I want to ask you about Jerome Baker. You touched on him real quick. There's been a lot of scuttlebutt that he's going to flip to Ohio State. Now, you set the record straight on the site yesterday. Tell the listeners, what is the latest with Jerome Baker? He is going to visit Florida this weekend. Is that correct?
No, that is correct. He's scheduled to visit Florida this weekend. Yep.
And do you feel like you're guessing? What do you think is going to happen in the end with Jerome Baker?
Well, it's interesting that the main man is going to see him this weekend. That being Urban Meyer himself is going to see Jerome Baker this weekend. So you're doing it, and certainly Ohio State plans things well. You're doing it at the right time when he's making his Florida visit. So in the end, I think if Will Muschamp is not at Florida next year, then Jerome Baker, in my mind, is almost certainly a Buckeye. I would be at that point a little surprised if he did not flip to Ohio State. If Will Muschamp remains at Florida, I still think there's a chance that Baker flips. His mom and dad are Ohio State fans. He's an Ohio State fan. But I just think the odds are much higher, very much higher, that if something happens that Will Muschamp is not at Florida, that Jerome Baker is a Buckeye.
Just clarify something that you said. You said Urban Meyer is going to visit him this weekend, but he's still making his trip to Florida this weekend?
Yes. Urban can go down there before he leaves for Florida, as an example, or he could come in after the Florida visit, but he is planning to be there and visit Jerome Baker this weekend. And I believe that, Meyer's going to, he takes recruiting as serious as any head coach in college football. That's how he hired his first Ohio State staff based, number one, on the ability of the assistant coaches to recruit. So, there's not going to be a time where Urban Meyer is going to get outworked by other head coaches. He's on the trail, and he's out recruiting, and this was the weekend that he's going to be out recruiting.
I love it. Great stuff out of the Dean of Ohio State football recruiting, Bill Kurlick. Thank you, Bill. Thank you to all the listeners out there. Take it away, best damn band in the land.